Well, it was hot and sticky out there, but that was a sensational qualifying session for the Monaco Grand Prix. Everything to lose for Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, of course, but he did it perfectly. We've seen that before with Charles, but I think this time it's slightly different because somewhere down that tunnel, the World Championship beckons. He's got a great car this year. He hasn't won at Monaco. Louis Chiron is to date the only Monegasque to win a Monaco Grand Prix. He did so in 1931 in a Bugatti. And he's there. He's on the pole. He did it. And he did it by what we saw a little bit of Miami, just soft tire after soft tire after soft tire, just perfecting his feel for the car. Not necessarily his feel for the lap, but for what the car was going to do in different situations, different tire warming situations. Traffic here, didn't get the tires perfectly. How can he compensate? All those things that great drivers with this supple ability to manipulate the car can do, and that's what we saw. Under pressure, beginning of Q3, he managed to get out early, found a free lap, and he did an 11.3. I don't think there's any way in the world anybody would have got near that 11.3, even if qualifying hadn't been brought to a premature halt by the red flag. And I think all credit not only to him, because the way he's withstanding the pressure right now, and you think of the things that have gone on personally in his life, various low moments he's had away from the racetrack and how he's dealt with those. It's the same way he's dealing now, I think, with the pressure of Charles, you got to win the Monaco Grand Prix. Every moment in its own space, every corner is the next corner that matters. And he's just taking his time on it. And it was good to see, I think, in that respect, the cameras finally showing a little bit of JOCK clear in the Ferrari garage, on Charles' side of the Ferrari garage, because we shouldn't underestimate the role played by JOCK, who's much more than just a very, very good race engineer with a massive amount of Formula One history. He's also something of, dare I say it, a sports psychologist, and does a lot of work away from Formula One in other sports as well. He's been very good on the Ferrari Young Driver program, and he's the guy that Charles wanted in his side of the garage for 2022. And there he is, and I think all credit to him for the Charles Leclerc we're seeing this year. Not that he's very different, because as I've said before, if you drive a bad car for long enough and continue to do well with it, I finish P5, P6, P7 below the radar when the music on the podium is playing, you're taking off your helmet, you're in parc fermé, nobody's really taking much interest in you. But this is the Ferrari that Charles Leclerc has driven certainly for 2 or 3 years prior to this resurgence in 2022. But because of that groundwork, because of the road dust that comes with that, the big point, i.e. winning the Monaco Grand Prix tomorrow, I think will feel relatively easy to him. I don't want to get ahead of myself, because obviously reliability is a major factor. Getting through the first corner is a factor. Getting through the pit stop unscathed is a major factor. Lots of things between Charles Leclerc's pole and getting the checkered flag. But at the moment, he's done a pretty good percentage of the job. Obviously, Ferrari will be nervous after what happened in Barcelona. You never know what's going to happen next in 2022 with the Formula One cars we have. But right now, I'd say pretty relaxed feeling. And it was quite funny, wasn't it, really? Because if it was Carlos Sainz that had spun at Portier right at the end instead of Sergio Perez, I suppose Red Bull would be saying, oh, it was deliberate, all this stuff. But you can't say that. It was Sergio Perez, who had been quickest in FP3. I mean, he used 3 sets of soft tyres. Charles and Carlos both used 4 sets of soft tyres in FP3. Gives you an idea of how focused they were on getting the pole. Max only used 2 sets in FP3. Anyway, Sergio Perez was quickest in FP3, and I can imagine going into that last phase of Q3, Sergio would have been thinking, the pole's there, I can get the pole, I can get the pole. Anyway, he spun. It was one of those weird 2022 spec spins with the back end just suddenly coming out. We saw quite a lot of that in Bahrain early on. We saw it relatively recently with Carlos Sainz and Valtteri Bottas, I think it was, in Miami. Just the back end comes out, and there doesn't seem to be anything they can do about it. And then, of course, Carlos Sainz arrived on the scene, and he spun to avoid. And then Max's final qualifying run ground to a halt there as well. Although he had gone quickly, he'd done a relatively quick lap the lap before, and it wasn't good enough. It was yellow. So the odds of Max getting the pole at that moment, pretty small. But he won't be happy, of course. P4 on the grid. Not only is he P4, which means that he's got 2 Ferraris and Sergio in front of him, but he's also on the dirty side of the road with Lando Norris P5 and Lando P5 on the clean side of the grid. Pretty good odds on him making a good start. And don't forget, last year he started P5 and finished on the podium. So yeah, Max, a difficult weekend for Max. I think the Max Verstappen we have at the moment will be starting to put this into the context of the championship as a whole. And if Monaco is one of those weekends where he just never got the right feel from the car, never got the tyre temperatures exactly right to do the lap he needed to drive, and throughout FP3 he was talking about understeer, and whether they got rid of the understeer in qualifying, I doubt it, because he never really looked great in the car. And I think he'll be thinking, if I can get a podium finish here in the context of the championship, that's not a bad result. Obviously Red Bull will be annoyed, and I think they would have been thinking we're going to be quick around Monaco. There was no reason not to think they would be quick. We know how good they are on fast and medium speed corners. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not great on slow speed as well, but that's how it would appear. The only other thing you could say is that maybe the Ferrari is lighter than the Red Bull, because this, more than any other circuit on the calendar, will be a litmus test for the weight of the cars. Because if you've got any sort of weight penalty, you're above the minimum weight, then it's going to show up around Monaco in terms of traction, acceleration, and to some extent braking as well. So that will potentially be the reason that the Ferrari was ahead of the Red Bull. And if the Ferrari is lighter than the Red Bull, then full marks to the engineering team at Ferrari. Interestingly, the other light car on the grid is the Alfa Romeo. That appears to be the lightest of the midfield cars. And the Mercedes, by contrast, would for sure be the heaviest still, which would be the reason for Lewis Hamilton saying in the middle of FP3, as he did when he asked how far away he was from Sergio Perez, who was quickest at the time. I don't know how I can make up that time, he said, which is, you can, when he says that, you can smell this is more than just understeer, oversteer, bouncing. This is a difference in weight between the two cars for sure. And I thought the other interesting thing was Carlos Sainz, because a lot of people to whom I spoke still had Carlos as the guy that they thought would be on the pole. There's a massive groundswell of pro Carlos Sainz people out there. He's a very, very quick racing driver with great car control. Mark Webber was saying, and he's so focused on this race, really wants to win it. He's really focused. And of course, he could well win it tomorrow if things fall his way. But I think none of that takes into account that the way he drives is very different from the way Charles drives. He's starting to, as I said earlier in other videos, he's starting to soften out a little bit in some situations. But generally speaking, he is what he is, and he's on the limit. And if he finds the limit on a perfect lap, it'll be a really quick lap. But if he has to compromise and massage the car and makes a small mistake, then it's much more difficult for him to regain that ground, whereas Charles can do that, and that is the art of being a great racing driver. Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, and of course Max Verstappen as well. Max is a question mark, I have to say. It looks like for all the world he just couldn't get the tyres to work as well as Sergio quite obviously got the tyres to work. Now, Sergio's greatest quality as a racing driver is still his ability to put down the power at a linear rate on the loaded rear. He never overloads the rear. That's why people say he's really good at time management. What that really means is, like Jenson Button, he's just phenomenal, a freak almost, in the way he can feel the rear of the car. But he's never on top of the rear. He's just feeding the power at exactly the right rate. And that's why he does such a good job massaging the rears. The front's a different matter, although when he was at Force India, he did improve a lot in that area as well. So I wonder whether this is showing up one of the shortcomings of Max Verstappen. He's still not quite as good as Sergio Perez in terms of the way he loads up the rears, particularly on outlaps when he's trying to get temperature in the tyres. Is it a question of perhaps being a little bit more spiky on outlaps, a little bit too aggressive? Until we see the telemetry, if we had the telemetry, we'd be able to answer that question. I can't answer the question. All I can say is around Monaco, it appears as if Sergio Perez, in qualifying at least, was able to get more out of the tyres before he started his quickest lap, and he had a better balanced car. And Max basically was dealing with either understeer or an untoward rear throughout qualifying. He did basically do the same lap times as Sergio Perez, so we shouldn't be too hard on him. But the bottom line is, if Sergio Perez is doing this lap time, then normally you would say that Max should be doing, 0.2, 0.3 quicker, which is where he normally is. But he isn't around Monaco, and it's been a chronic thing on both Friday and Saturday now. So that's a really interesting aspect of qualifying, I think. And looking at some of the other times, another very good lap by George Russell. Had a big scare in FP3 when he came across Sergio Perez going very slowly, and there was nearly a massive shunt. So that was a wake-up call for everybody, really, on how dodgy these big cars are around Monaco now. Not that he should do anything about it. I mean, Monaco's Monaco, and we know what it is going in. But that was a big moment for George in FP3. But he recovered very well from that. Very good lap time under pressure, as has become his fashion. Fernando Alonso also really good in the Alpine, a car which is heavier, if you like, than an Alfa Romeo. It wasn't brilliantly balanced. They've got a bit of bouncing as well. And yet Fernando, the race driver that he is, the field driver that he is, the compensation driver that he is, got the lap time out of the car when it mattered. And he just made it through into Q3 because of traffic. But once he was there, really, really good job. To out-qualify Lewis Hamilton, who didn't get in a great first run, you got to say. And then the second run was aborted because of the red flag. So a disappointing, frustrating, annoying day for Lewis Hamilton, who would have been coming out of the Spanish Grand Prix thinking, right, we're coming to Monaco, driver's circuit, half a chance here that we're going to be maybe even on the podium, looking forward to this. Got to Monaco, the Mercedes is bouncing all over the place. They're running lower and even stiffer perhaps than they could ever run before, just to try to get downforce out of the car, into the car, without porpoising. But they still got, nonetheless, this low frequency bouncing, as did quite a few other cars and teams, but probably accentuated more on the Mercedes. Plus the Mercedes has got the weight penalty. And suddenly, relative to all the other Monaco Grand Prix that Lewis has ever driven, this car felt horrendous for him around there. Not that that's an excuse, because you adapt quickly. And there were moments when he was quicker than George, but he didn't get in that lap time at the end. And to have that car at Monaco for Lewis Hamilton, and we know how good he is around Monaco, is a shame for everybody, I think, because it's always good to see a great driver in a great car doing a great job. But Lewis didn't have that today, and he's starting way down P8. I mean, I don't know how he's going to have the motivation to do that. And of course, that's right in the middle of what could be a schmozzle at the first corner as well. So he's behind Fernando Alonso, did a very good job in the Alpine, as I say. Sebastian Vettel eventually got it together in the Aston Martin, P9, but 4 times world champion, he should do. But good job by him. And Esteban Ocon in the other Alpine, which is a good job for that team. When you think about neither AlphaTauri getting through, Daniel Ricciardo not getting through, neither Alfa Romeo getting through, there's both Alpines getting through in Monaco, in front of a very French crowd and loving it all. Surprising number of people walking around in the, surprising for me anyway, walking around in the, outside the circuit, all wearing Alpine shirts. Seems to be quite a big deal now. So, and the graphics are amazing, aren't they? I mean, all that blue and pink and everything. The car looked fabulous in the sunshine today, I thought, at Monaco. And the big disappointment for all of that would be Pierre Gasly, 13.2 P5 in FP3. And he didn't get out of Q1. Traffic for sure, but a big disappointment because that car is a lot better now. The car that Gasly drives is a lot better now, new chassis, and they've done a lot of work on it to get it right, and didn't get out of Q1. So that'll be a really big disappointment for Pierre in front of the French. A lot of the French spectators here at Monaco. Must make it clear, Monaco is separate from France, obviously. So Pierre, Lando Norris was again very quick. I haven't said really very much about Lando, other than he drives like Charles, really. Everything is fluid and beautiful to watch. Everything is manipulated and full of confidence. And I think, got to say here, I don't want to be too hard on him, but if you've got a car that's that good, the reason you employ a Daniel Ricciardo is, he's quick, he's a great overtaker, but he's also very experienced. He's not the sort of guy that would crash on a Friday at Monaco and make it very difficult to get the car ready for qualifying. But that's what he did. And I said yesterday we'd find out exactly what the cause was of that accident, because Daniel made this quizzical comment of, I'll talk about it when I get back to the pits. But when he talked about it when he got back to the pits, all he said was, well, I made a mistake. It was a really difficult corner. It was very quick. These cars, when they get away from you, blah, blah, blah. So not very good, really. So that's it. All Ferrari front row. The cars look amazing at Monaco, the red cars, beautiful looking cars as well. I mean, I think they're the best looking Ferraris since the John Barnard, Enrico Scalabroni cars of 1989, 1990. Just beautiful to watch around the circuit. Lovely shade of red they have there now. The crowd are loving it. As it's Charles' weekend now to lose, isn't it? He's on the pole, looking really good. Interesting to see how Max races tomorrow. Presumably he will get past Sergio Perez quite quickly. Presumably the Perez car, once it's rebuilt, won't feel quite the same maybe, and Max maybe P3, but it's difficult to see him doing anything more than that. One-stop strategy probably. The tyres seem to be lasting a long time, but the only other factor that could come in from sideways is that there is a storm cloud with a little bit of lightning on it showing when you look at some of the forecasts at around race time, but of course nobody's making any predictions. As I speak, qualifying is over and quite a large dark cloud base came over the Principality. But now it's cleared up again, it's blue sky outside. So, you know, the locals say, yeah, it could rain tomorrow, but it may not. So who knows what's going to happen. We'll find out tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you then. Thanks for watching.